Climate change has emerged in the past few years as one of the major long-term development challenges facing the globe today. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change defines climate change as a change of climate which is attributable directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere, and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. Its impact on small island developing states like St. Vincent and the Grenadines is devastating. On Christmas Eve of 2013, St. Vincent was struck by a freak storm resulting in 13 deaths and over $300 million in damages to property and infrastructure. In responding to this development challenge, JEMS implemented a national climate change campaign. Here, Andrew Simmons, climate change advisor, speaking about the JEMS climate change program.
This activity is part of the JEMS Progressive Community Organization National Climate Change Campaign. Climate change is a severe problem that affects countries across the globe, and the impact on small island states is extremely severe. We know of the impact on health, the impact of agriculture, the whole destruction of our banana industry, and a number of different issues. So what we've done, JEMS currently working with a number of organizations, about 7 organizations across the country, in most of them in rural communities and 1 in Kingston. We have provided funding in October to these community-based organizations, and they were involved in a series of programs within their communities. Some of them were involved in tree planting activities, some in community cleanup activities, some in climate change workshop trying to raise the awareness of residents within these communities on the various projects that they're facing. So today what we have done, we have come together at a national workshop where we are looking at what are the issues that were faced by these communities, how did they respond to these issues, what are some of the challenges that they face, and what came out very strongly that the major problem faced by community organization is that of resource. And when we talk about resource, we're talking about financial resource as well as expertise.
Roger Young, treasurer of JEMS, presents details of the various activities and outcomes of the JEMS Climate Change Campaign project.
The activity we are focusing on here today is one of several being implemented by JEMS under a broader project entitled Community Participatory Action to reduce the impacts of climate change in vulnerable communities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The project primarily focuses on awareness building and community action and is funded by the Jewish Community Federation Goldman Environment. The overall project has the following components: a baseline survey, which we are assessing communities' knowledge, understanding, and their observations in relation to climate change. Also, we have training workshops where we are going to train CBOs so that they can program better for their communities. We also have cultural weeks where we are using cultural art form to raise the awareness of the country generally on climate change related issues. We also have, as part of the project, community mapping, where we are identifying the areas within specific communities that are susceptible to climate change related hazards and vulnerabilities. As part of the project also, we have live radio programs, 3 such programs. We have done 2 so far. We have this activity which we are promoting today, which is the National Week of Climate Action. Another activity we have is the development of a website for JEMS. That one is progressing very smoothly, should be completed very soon. And finally, we have a production of a video documentary.
The JEMS Climate Change Initiative is viewed as a model for building resilience of communities to adapt to climate change. The project is supported by the OECS mission and the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. Otis Jocelyn, Science Officer of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, speaks about the climate change challenges facing small island developing states.
With our institution, a CARICOM institution called the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. Now, just to give you a bit of history of that organization started to materialize in around 2002 when the heads of government of the region at that time thought that it would be essential to have an institution that addresses or seek to address climate change issues for the region. During the implementation of the MAC project, we did some work here in St. Vincent because one of the things that we always strive for is that whatever decisions we make must be evidence-based. We must have scientific documentation that reflect what we are trying to do and not that we want to do things haphazardly. So as a result of that, that project, we did an assessment here in St. Vincent. We looked at 3 areas. The Spring Village or the Cumberland Watershed was one of them. We look at Beckway as an island and as an ecosystem. And we also look at Union Island in a similar vein. The main component we looked at was water resources then. And the main issues coming out of Spring Village would have been, of course, the whole issue of flooding when that river comes down. So there was talk about doing early warning systems and so forth. For the 2 islands of the Grenadines, water scarcity was the main issue being reflected there. To support those information, we did what we call climate modeling or climate assessment. Now, this is one of the large services that the center offers for the entire region, is that we are involved in what is called climate modeling. That is, we look at scenarios, possible likely scenarios based on developmental policies and so forth for the countries. And we model that to reflect what sort of impacts countries are likely to face.
The Climate Change Campaign project produced a set of outcomes. One of these outcomes is the production of GIS climate risk vulnerability maps in 40 villages, 2 towns and the island of Beckway in 5 areas of hazards for each community. This was done through the implementation of 6 climate risk vulnerability mapping exercises in the communities of Georgetown, Mesopotamia Valley, Vermont Valley, Chateaubelair, Beckway, and 15 villages adjacent to the Kings Hill Forest Reserve. Each community identified 7 hazards and discussed strategies for addressing these hazards. The Physical Planning Division digitized the maps, which were produced through community consultative and participatory exercises. Climate change training for community leaders were conducted to enhance their capacity on issues relating to climate change, climate financing, leadership, and capacity building for over 120 community leaders across the island. Here are the views of participants of the National Workshop on Climate Finance.
In this project with the climate control, we are raising awareness, we're doing advocacy, we're doing education, we're doing research. This would impact in terms of getting the community involved with some engagement to help us and everybody play the part.
I think the idea of a network will clearly strengthen the ability of community organization to speak with one voice in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the issue of climate change. It's a very welcome initiative.
Climate change has really inspired me to get more involved and my organization more involved in activities that will help to protect our environment and help to lessen the negative impact that it can have on climate change and in helping to build a better St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
We are planting trees. So we have plant trees at the river. This will help with soil erosion. It will also help with the CO2 emission. It will bring food to us. So we are talking about sustainability. And we are also taking plastic and disposing them properly.
In an effort to provide information on climate change to the public, a series of live radio talk show program on the impact of climate change on small island developing states was held at WeFM Radio. These programs were also carried live on Star FM, NBC Radio, and Garifuna Radio. An interview with Andrew Simmons, JEMS Climate Change Advisor, was held with officials of the OECS Secretariat and broadcast on national radio stations in 9 member countries across the Caribbean. JEMS has embraced the use of technology to promote its climate change and sustainable development work. It has developed a website and used other forms of social media as medium to promote its work. In an effort to mobilize communities to participate in the climate change campaign, 5 community cultural weeks were held. Calypsos, poetry, drumming, and other local cultural art forms were used as media for raising awareness on the impact of climate change and mobilize residents to participate in the climate action initiative in their respective communities. There has been a noticeable increase in volunteerism across the country in areas of environmental activism. Over 300 youths and community leaders were engaged in activities to organize their communities to participate in the Climate Action Week. This activity was made possible as a result of the funding provided by JEMS to support the activities of participating organizations. Hear what community leaders have to say about this important initiative.
The plastic bottles we are seeing is a sight for sore eyes. Also, we are seeing the banks being eroded because we don't have a lot of trees on the river banks. So what we'll do with this is to help to see how we can minimize with the plastic bottles, also planting vetiver grass and other trees, coconuts across the river banks, and other fruit trees.
We've transformed a garbage heap or 2 garbage heap into one of the most spectacular and beautiful gardens in St. Vincent. Our emphasis on climate change, because we have a river, the challenge is heavy. With all the silt that comes down, people are now grazing cattle and sheep in the river. On the banks now, we plant the coconut trees to preserve, but there's land degradation. We apply for tools, because we're using a little cutlass. We have no rake, no hoe, no weed eater. It's been costing us money for 7 years, but we have to do something.
We have a large beach, and a lot of activities normally go on there that is not that healthy when it's finished. As well, we are recipients of 2 rivers, the one is Barrowly and next door is the Curtains. We are going to clean these areas very much, and our group is looking forward to have this done early.
From all accounts, the JEMS Goldman Environmental Prize, Jewish Community Federation Climate Change Program has been a tremendous success. The project has contributed to enhancing the awareness of over 50,000 residents of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, building the capacity of local communities to mitigate climate change and provide other benefits to both urban and rural communities, thus contributing to enhancing the overall resilience of residents to adapt and mitigate climate change and reduce incidents of poverty. Through the participation on Andrew Simmons, JEMS Climate Change Advisor, it is hoped that the project has contributed to influencing the outcome of COP21 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Paris in 2015. There is need for government to develop appropriate policies on climate change and mobilize investment to scale up and roll out the benefits of the project to communities across the country.